සුපිරි එලියක් වෙළඳපොලේ අඩුම මිලකට රුපියල් 160යි.
Tonight, no more pandering. Sri Lankan legend says the solution to the country's cricketing crisis lies in the hands of the sports minister.
Ultimately, until the Minister of Sport decides enough is enough, I'm going to change this constitution where we professionalize the management, nothing can really happen.
Fishy business. The report of the Committee on Public Accounts reveals staggering 3 billion rupee customs duty losses from double cab imports. Fake news action. Sri Lanka receives a further 2 million Sinopharm doses today as investigation is launched into misleading video on Moderna dangers.
If a person is found guilty of the charges of fake news, he is liable for a rigorous imprisonment for a period of 3 years.
Zero tolerance. Public health inspectors warn wedding organizers of strict action after reports surface of mass violations on guest limits. All this and much more coming up on this Thursday, the 22nd of July 2021.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. Sri Lanka's cricket team, once considered one of the top 3 teams in the world, has seen a score of disappointing performances in the recent past, continuously struggling to find its feet in almost every series or tournament since 2016. Of all established international teams, Sri Lankans have the worst win-loss percentage across all formats since January 2016, with a 31.11% winning streak and a staggering 60.74% losing streak. Sri Lankan cricketing great and former SLC administrator Sidath Vettimuni, however, insists that only a new constitution will be able to bring about the much required revival of Sri Lanka cricket. Speaking to Indivari Amuwatta on our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, he highlighted that the intervention of the sports minister is a must in order for these changes to see the light of day.
We talk about a corrupt administration, and now in recent days about the behavior and discipline of cricketers themselves. Is it the administration or is it the political structure here? Who do we blame here?
You see, I think ultimately it is at the ministerial level where the responsibility lies. Our cricket comes under the Ministry of Sport, and the minister has the power to make a call and say, I want to make these changes. And ultimately, until the Minister of Sport decides enough is enough, I'm going to change this constitution where we professionalize the management, nothing can really happen. Through an act of parliament, this can be done. You don't need to do anything else. Through an act of parliament, it can be done. We are still clinging to this archaic system, which is just a joke in my opinion.
You express hope that the current sports minister would be able to take into consideration these recommendations, but over time we've seen sports ministers in good faith wanting to do a lot, but in the recent past we haven't seen any winning series.
The Honourable Minister knows what the issues are. He's been a sportsman himself. He should know what needs to be done. We've shouted about this for years now, and I'm saying it again, until we change our constitution and a specific constitution for cricket, nothing can really happen.
You talk a lot about revamping the system, restructuring cricketing in Sri Lanka, the administration, bringing about reforms. What do we need now going forward? You speak about the good we have here. We have a lot of talent, but if it is underutilized, what's the point?
It's not underutilized, it's wrongly utilized. I really think we need to change our constitution to get anything right, because having 147 votes and getting elected to a system where you have to pander to the clubs will never work. We will not make progress. India has 38, I think. Australia maybe 7, New Zealand 5, South Africa 8, England 18 or 22. Little Sri Lanka has 147 votes. Now the problem is there are clubs that don't play cricket who have 2 votes each. So it is a chaotic situation. We have to revamp that system. There is a technical committee now and they've made some recommendations. I'm very keen to see whether those recommendations are going to be seen through, because whatever anybody recommends, if the board doesn't do it, and the board won't do it because the board is obliged to the stakeholders, which are the clubs. So that needs to be broken.
In Sri Lanka in recent times, we do see that whether it's international coaches or locals, either they leave before the contract expires or they're sacked. The complaint is that they cannot work with the administration. In your view, how do we rectify this?
If you look at today, I too seriously believe we need to bring in some of our own coaches. I'm not criticizing the foreign coaches. Maybe we are not using these coaches properly, or our guys are not understanding them. But I seriously think, like India, we need to get the likes of Mahela, Kumar, Roshan, all these guys to get involved. It is better for us to pay our own guys a little more and keep them. They know what the culture of our cricket was, how we blooded the youngsters. So I think it's about time that our guys got involved. The fear I have is before long we are going to end up losing to Ireland, we are going to end up losing to Oman, we are going to end up losing to Afghanistan, and then we will be out of the top 10 teams. And when that happens, the money will dry. Sri Lanka became a product television could sell. But you got to ask the question, can they sell Sri Lanka now?
අද සේවසකට වැඩි ජනතා විශ්වාසය නව සංයෝගයකින් රයිනෝ රෝෆිං සහ සීලිං ෂීට්.
The Committee on Public Accounts has reported that the government has incurred a staggering loss of 3 billion rupees following the importation of 3,000 double cabs into the country. The report says that this was one of the many instances where the government has lost and will continue to lose tax income unless the urgent changes to procedures are brought in.
A report by the Parliamentary Committee on Public Accounts has revealed a loss of 3 billion rupees incurred by the government as a result of low custom duties levied by the Customs Department in the importation of Toyota Hilux smart cabs. The observations was made in the committee's first report to the first session of the 9th Parliament, which was presented on the 20th of July. According to the committee's report, a loss of 1 million rupees had been incurred for each of the 3,000 vehicles imported. The committee had also observed that the government incurs massive losses in tax income due to irregularities taking place during the importation and registration of these vehicles. According to the report, vehicles imported for special purposes at a lower tax rate are registered with the Department of Motor Traffic as dual-purpose vehicles. It also showed that during the 2010 to 2019 period, 44 vans were imported as special purpose vans with a lower tax rate and subsequently registered with the Department of Motor Traffic as dual purpose vehicles. During registration, the vehicles has been stated as for passenger and good transport, which has resulted in at least 1,300 million rupees in tax losses. The report adds that the government has also lost 56 million rupees in taxes due to the Toyota Land Cruiser not being properly cleared by the customs under the passenger transport category. It has also been revealed that a luxury Toyota Land Cruiser had also been imported using such questionable practices by fixing a public address system to it and declaring it as a special purpose vehicle, resulting in only a 1.5 million rupee duty being charged.
More news on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
Big 3.
Welcome back. In more news, commenting on reports of a video warning people not to take the Moderna vaccine in Kandy, police media spokesperson senior DIG Ajit Rohana says that spreading false information that can harm the national vaccination drive can lead to rigorous imprisonment for 3 years and will also be dealt with as per the penal code and the quarantine law. In the meantime, an incident where 2 doses of the Moderna vaccine were administered on the same day to a person was reported in Kandy. Speaking on this matter, State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Channa Jayasumana says that both healthcare staff and the public have a responsibility to avoid such occurrences by maintaining proper communication.
Earlier this week, health authorities in the Kandy district commenced a vaccination drive in the district following the arrival of the Moderna vaccines from the United States. However, some teething problems have been reported. This includes a 51-year-old woman residing in Augustavatta Peradeniya who visited a vaccination centre at the Uda Peradeniya Youth Corps Centre along with her spouse on the 20th of July to obtain their first dose of the Moderna vaccine, receiving 2 doses on the same day. Shortly after, the woman had to be hospitalized after she began experiencing severe pain. The patient was discharged from the hospital last evening. Regional Director of Health Services in Kandy, Dr. Senaka Talagala, said that a report has been sought from the Gangavatta Korale MOH office under whose responsibility the vaccination centre comes under. Meanwhile, commenting on the incident, State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Channajaya Sumana, says that there have not been any detrimental effects reported across the world following the administration of 2 doses in a single day. However, the minister added that healthcare staff administering the vaccines as well as people lining up to receive their jabs have a collective responsibility to ensure proper communication between both parties. Meanwhile, a complaint has been lodged by the Judicial Medical Officer of the National Hospital in Kandy, Dr. Palitha Subasinghe, over a video containing misleading information on the Moderna vaccine on social media.
යම් කිසි පුද්ගලයෙක් කිසියම් වීඩියෝවක් සමාජ මාධ්‍ය අතර සංසරණයට යොදවලා තියෙනවා මේ ඉන්ජෙක්ෂන් එක ගහන්න එපා මේක ලුසිෆෙරේස් කියන සංගঠনයක යඩංගු වෙනවා අනාගත කාලයේදී 5G තාක්ෂණයත් එක්කන් ඇමරිකාවෙන් ඉඳන් ඒ එන්නත ලබාගත් පුද්ගලයන්ව පාලනය කිරීමේ හැකියාව වෙනවා කියලා මේගොල්ලෝ මේ සමාජ මාධ්‍ය වලට දාලා තියෙන වීඩියෝ එකේ කියවෙනවා මේක සම්පූර්ණ බොරුවක්.
Kandy police are conducting a special investigation into the complaint and Kandy police are seeking to get assistance from the Criminal Investigation Department in order to ascertain the real perpetrators who have circulated the fake news. If a person is found guilty of the charges of fake news, he is liable for a rigorous imprisonment for a period of 3 years. They could be charged under the section 120 of the Penal Code in addition to the laws of quarantine rules and regulations.
In more news, 2 million more Sinopharm vaccines arrived at the Bandaranaike International Airport this morning. Following the arrival of this latest consignment, Sri Lanka has so far received a total of 9.1 million doses of Sinopharm. Further, Sri Lanka is also expecting a donation of 1.6 million doses of the Sinopharm, expected to arrive at the end of this month. Meanwhile, as for the vaccination figures, 175,696 inoculations were conducted yesterday. Of this number, 111,465 jabs of Moderna were administered as first doses. A further 16,252 people were inoculated with their first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. In addition, 42,814 people received a first dose of the Sinopharm vaccine yesterday, while 5,165 got their second dose. By last evening, the country has immunized 6,317,202 persons with at least a single dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. Of that number, 1,722,998 people have received both vaccine doses by last evening. With vaccinations across the country in full swing, the Government Medical Officers Association too has a code calls for public not be choosy with their vaccines.
As Sri Lankans, we are lucky enough to get the vaccine. There are several countries in the world who haven't received even a single dose of vaccine, and they are starving for the vaccinations to combat the COVID-19. So in this context, the people are confused of type of vaccines they have to get in order to defeat the disease. So we request the people, the first available vaccine is the best vaccines. We have received so far Pfizer vaccines, then Moderna vaccine, AstraZeneca, Covishield, then the Sinopharm vaccine, and also the small amount of Sputnik vaccine. Out of these vaccines, whatever the vaccines are protective and it is the reasonable efficacy to combat the COVID-19. So when we reach about 70% of the immunity by vaccinating the people, we are relatively safe compared to the other world.
In the meantime, with vaccination for school teachers as well as non-academic staff are underway, the Ministry of Education has requested principals, teachers and non-academic staff who have not received a single dose of the vaccine in any province to immediately inform their respective zonal educational officers.
The Public Health Inspectors Union have warned of strict action against people violating health and safety guidelines recommended by the government when conducting events such as weddings after photographic evidence has been received of several such instances. Further, the police has also taken steps to increase its strength to monitor and arrest those who violate the quarantine law during the long weekend.
Sri Lanka still remains under high risk from COVID-19 as daily infections reported from the island are still over the 1,400 mark. With the government granting permission to the public to conduct events such as weddings under certain limitations, the advice of the health authorities is to adhere to limitations, as excessive gatherings can lead to the creation of COVID-19 clusters.
ඡායාරූප විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් මහජන සෞඛ්‍ය පරීක්ෂකවරුන්ගේ සංගමය වෙත ලැබිලා තියෙනවා සෞඛ්‍ය උපදෙස් කඩ කරමින් විවාහ මංගල උත්සව පවත්වන ආකාර සම්බන්ධව. හෙට දිනේ ඉඳලා අපි මේ විවාහ මංගල උත්සව සියල්ල පරීක්ෂා කරනවා. මේ පරීක්ෂා කිරීම වලදී යම් සෞඛ්‍ය උපදෙස් කඩ කිරීමක් අනාවරණය වුණොත් ඒ විවාහ මංගල උත්සවයේ සංවිධානය කරපු පුද්ගලයින්ට සහ ඒ ආයතනයේ හිමිකරුවන්ට එරෙහිව මහේස්ත්‍රාත් අධිකරණයේ නඩු පවරන්න කටයුතු කරනවා.
Meanwhile, with the entire country heading into a long weekend from tomorrow, the message from police is clear to those who may attempt to violate quarantine law.
We are going to deploy additional police officers in order to implement quarantine rules and regulations. Approximately 10,000 police officers would be deployed in the weekend to monitor the quarantine law and order situation, especially the misconduct of the general public. The persons who do not obey with quarantine rules and regulations would be arrested by Sri Lanka police.
Meanwhile, during the course of yesterday, 1,604 COVID-19 infections were detected from the island. The Colombo district once again topped the list with 486 infections, while Gampha was second with 279 infections. In addition, 213 cases were reported from Kaluthara, 82 from Batiklo, 66 from Ampara, 60 from Badulla, 56 from Gaul, and 38 from Kurunegala. The remaining 286 infections came from 17 other districts. Further, 38 foreign arrivals were also included in yesterday's infection numbers. Meanwhile, 997 COVID-19 recoveries were reported from the island during the day, bringing the total number of recoveries in the country to 264,755. The country's active number of cases, meanwhile, stands at 22,053, following the detection of 1,128 cases during the day.
A team from the Attorney General's Department has been appointed, led by Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Piris, to advise the police on what legal action against whoever is found responsible for the sexual abuse of a 16-year-old domestic worker at former Minister Rishad Badiuddin's residence, who died from severe burn injuries this week. Meanwhile, police have recorded statements from residents and staff at the victim's workplace, including the former minister's spouse and her father as well.
The Attorney General's Department has appointed Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Piris to lead a team that will advise the Police Department on legal action pertaining to the death of a 16-year-old domestic worker employed at former Minister Rishad Badiuddin's Colombo residence. Accordingly, senior police officials, including Western Province Senior DIG Deshabandhu Tennakun, were summoned by Attorney General Sanjay Rajaratnam for a discussion on the ongoing investigations. At the meeting, the Attorney General was given a comprehensive briefing on the progress of the investigations. The death of 16-year-old Shalini on the 15th of this month, 12 days after her apparent self-immolation and 9 months into her self-employment, has raised calls for urgent action to be taken after a post-mortem report revealed that she had been sexually abused. Police teams are currently in the process of recording statements from a number of individuals, including existing and former staff and occupants of the former minister's residence. Meanwhile, the victim's father was summoned to the office of the Senior Superintendent of Nuwara to record a statement today based on a complaint lodged with the police by a human rights organization.
32 teachers' trade unions engaged in demonstrations today at multiple locations across the country, disregarding the health and safety guidelines introduced by the Director General of Health Services, prohibiting such activities. As the strike entered its 11th day, disrupting online education, a protest launched by the teacher trade unions also caused severe traffic congestion today from the Golface roundabout to the Presidential Secretariat roundabout.
Teachers' trade unions decided to carry on with their island-wide trade union action of refraining from online education after discussions with the Education Minister ended with no result on Tuesday. Accordingly, the strike entered its 11th day today, with online education coming to a standstill. Disregarding the pandemic situation, the demonstrations continued at a number of locations across the island, with 32 teacher trade unions protesting over salary anomalies. The teachers' union staged a protest in front of the Fort railway station and later marched to the presidential secretariat. The march resulted in heavy traffic congestion along Lotus Road, disrupting vehicular movement and thus resulting in the closure of the stretch from Golf Face roundabout to the presidential secretariat roundabout. These protests are being launched at a time when protests and mass gatherings have been prohibited by the Director General of Health. However, the protests did not see any police intervention today. Later, upon the request of the protesting trade unions, 3 trade unionists were permitted to meet and hold a discussion with officials of the presidential secretariat. Meanwhile, a group of teachers met with the chief prelates of the Malvatta and Asgiriya chapters today and briefed them on the pay issues they are facing at present.
Sri Lanka's fight against COVID-19 was reinforced today as the country received 500,000 rapid antigen test kits given as a donation from USAID. Mission Director to Sri Lanka and Maldives for the USAID program, Reid Ashliman, stated that the move reflects the strong relationship between the US and Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka received a donation of 500,000 rapid diagnostic test kits from the United States to strengthen Sri Lanka's fight against COVID-19. These test kits, worth 300 million rupees, were delivered to the Ministry of Health through USAID. Commenting on the donation, USAID Mission Director to Sri Lanka and Maldives, Reid Ashliman, said that by enabling rapid detection of the virus, these tests donated by the American people will save lives and protect public health in Sri Lanka. He added that the donation builds on previous support rendered by the US to the Sri Lankan government's pandemic response and reflects the strong and long-standing partnership between the two countries. The antigen-detecting rapid diagnostic test kits directly detect the presence of the COVID-19 virus and are simple to use and enable fast, decentralized access to direct testing. USAID's program in the country, totaling more than 350 billion rupees since 1961, promotes a healthy, educated and employed population.
In business news, issuing a circular today, the Colombo Stock Exchange announced that the implementation date of the delivery versus payment system has been postponed to the 16th of August from its previous launch date of the 26th of July. The launch date was postponed at the CAC as the CAC had decided more time and mock test runs were needed to rectify the issues that had taken place during the past testing cycles. As such, the circular read that the final mock run will commence on the 26th of this month and that it will continue until the 6th of August. The Colombo Stock Exchange urged stockbroker firms and other members involved in the system to actively engage in the test runs to ensure the smooth functioning of activities after the implementation. The all-share price index gained 68.43 points to close at 8,136.76. However, the S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks plunged by 2.78 points to end at 3,092.31. The market turnover was 5.6 billion rupees. Here's Dimantha Matthew with an update on the day's market performance.
The ASPI was up by about 68 points and the index managed to cross the 8,100 mark to leave at 8,143 points. However, if you take the S&P SL 20 index, we saw a bit of a dip of around 3 points during the day. Overall, the transportation sector was again the pick of the turnover. In addition to that, we are seeing turnover levels coming in the material sector and the capital goods sector, with again construction and building material companies getting reactivated in the index. So buying interest is coming into this specific sector, especially the cement companies and the tile companies. We are seeing significant amount of high net worth and institutional activity is also taking place in the dollar income companies. Today's turnover levels were very high. Again, 5.6 billion rupees of turnover.
The rupee ended stronger at 199 rupees and 90 cents against the US dollar today. Now let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.